you have a newly formed terrace. You've done the earthworks to get it straight. You started putting down some nutrients. And if you only had one bale of straw, where do you apply it? This is Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. So this earthworks is very fresh. Unfortunately, it's been rained on a number of times without straw. But we finally got to the point where we had dry enough weather to come work with it. And I actually have 2 bales of straw, but we have 1 bale over there and another bale set out here. If I only had 1 bale of straw, where would I put it? Well, you know, in a previous video, we talked about nutrients moving down slope in the water. So nitrogen is water soluble. It's going to move down slope. We also talked about water moving on parallel 90 degrees to contour. So if this outside berm is slightly higher than the inside, that water is going to move back into the hill here. So if we only had 1 bale of straw and we had to cover this area, we have a couple choices. We could spread them thin across the whole ground. That's choice number 1. Choice number 2 is we could just put bales of straw where there's water damage. So you can see here, we had a little bit of water running, so there's a bale of straw here to kind of back up that silt. Or we can put the bale of straw on the steepest slopes. Which answer is the right answer? So first, number 1, spreading straw evenly over everything, a very thin layer of straw, is only useful if you have a cover crop in place that's going to be able to take seed. We're a little bit later in the season. We don't have a cover crop that can take seed, but you can see here we spread the straw over the widest area possible, and the cover crop is filling in the blanks. Here we don't have seed because the season is in. We're going to still put clover on it, but it's not enough to really make a big difference because it may not germinate, as the temperature at night is 25 degrees. Temperature during the day is maybe 60, 50 degrees. You need about a soil temperature of 70 degrees to get a really good germination rate before it starts getting colder. So spreading straw evenly here will reduce the amount of water that is able to directly interact with the soil, which would slow down any puddling or any kind of run that could happen. But the area is pretty level, so we don't need to worry about that as much, as we saw by the patterns in where silt and water stood on the earthworks. So that may not be our best solution to spread all the straw we've got in all the area. Unlike the nutrients, straw doesn't add nutrients to the soil. It simply protects the soil from solar radiation and from the direct impact of raindrops as they fall from the sky. Well, knowing this, it's very important that we now think, what's next? Well, number 2 was to only put the straw bale or the straw in areas we know the water is moving. And that's what we've got right here. So I've got 1 bale that I'm not going to remove, but I also did a micro earthworks to give me an idea of where that water is moving from. So there's a little bit of run here. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but I dug up a little berm here. I stomped it down. So there's kind of like a little walkway here that I stomped down. And then I cut a little notch up here, and I stomped that little notch around the notch. And what this is going to tell me is how much soil is moving on this surface. So you can see a little water settled up top there. I've disturbed a lot of soil, knocking down the lumps and spreading out the soil. So I want to now see how much soil is going to move. So I did a little tiny check dam or a little tiny basin here, kind of a micro swale, to kind of see if that fills in. If that fills in, that tells me that this corner is far too low because water is getting enough speed across that surface area to accumulate. And then what I'm going to do then is the first dry day, I'll come out here with the BCS and I'll dig a big basin out in the middle of that and move that soil down here to make a bund like this, but only bigger, so that we can slow, spread, and soak in that water, and it doesn't have the opportunity to go over the bund here. That's the final clue about where we should put our straw. I hope you guys have been playing along here, because where you place your straw, especially limited resources, when you put your seed in the ground, especially with the price of seed, you have to be strategic because you want maximum growth with minimum inputs. Now, more straw may be available, it may not be available, but the straw that we have must go on the ground to protect the soil from both solar radiation and the drying and freezing effect and water flow and water movement. So we're going to focus the bale of straw that I have out on the outer berm here and the top of this bund. This is very important, folks. The outer berm will get seeded whether or not we know that seed will germinate. We need that seed bank in the outer berm because that's also a vegetative strip and it has the steepest slope. If water is impacted by gravity and goes downhill due to this 90 degrees to contour, and we have a steep slope, that means a higher potential velocity for the water itself, which means a higher probability of channeling. And if this slope out here channels, we will have damage to our earthworks. So we'll have to bring the excavator back out. We'll have to do repairs. We might have to do repairs with a shovel, and that will be difficult and hard work. It's not impossible work, but again, like I told you in other videos, if there's only 3 or 4 people out here and we're not doing a class, then we're not really going to be as productive in the sense of having 8 or 10 people on a line here with shovels throwing soil uphill. This stuff manually is better with more people. Now, we do have equipment to break up the soil and to move the soil, but you're still going to have to move soil upslope. It's very easy to move soil downslope, but it takes more energy to move it upslope. But if we do it the right way by securing this bund with the straw that we have available, until we can get more straw, until we can get better cover crops, then we'll be doing a lot to protect this particular bund. And you can see that action on this side, how this area has been strawed out significantly. Now, even strawed out significantly, some of the chickens figured out how to get up here, and they have been scraping the sides down here, but that's okay. Again, we have used the math that we've talked about in previous videos to make sure that our rise and run are correct. So we still have a stable slope. It's just not desirable if animals are going to come in here. Now, below slope here, we have much wider areas that have an established cover crop. Because we know we're not going to have an established cover crop here, we're going to go find more straw. But in the short term, with the potential for rain and snow and weather events, we're going to get the straw on the outer bund where you can see that line of quarters. Basically, when you bust a bale straw, it's going to have little sections. And I'll start in this corner down here, and I'll work my way back to the other side. Now, I have found more piles of compost and other materials that can still go above grade or above the band here, but getting this band taken care of, making sure that I have as much biomass on this hill as possible is going to help us protect this hill. If the soil falls back down in the spring, we can till this out. And I walked over here to show you how we have like a ditch here. So we're actually standing on a terrace that's intended for vehicles, but there's almost a ditch right here because the maintenance of these earthworks is to basically keep trenching out what's called a channel. Now, if you visit the website at www.prosperityhomestead.org or you attend a class, we've got handouts that show you what these terms mean. But essentially, the ground nearest this bund or this slope will be the lowest when it comes to this next terrace, and that soil will get thrown upslope. And if we're able to establish cover crops and we're able to establish vegetation on this hill, we are assured to have stable slope. The vegetation on the hill will primarily be grass, and we start that work by putting on all the straw that we can find to, again, prevent the water from pushing off the soil and to provide some kind of cover to protect any seeds that might be there so that they can resprout. You will notice that there's a grass edge at these contours. That's the original contour. There's a grass edge on the bund that is the original contour line before we excavate it below that location. That is, of course, got roots in it. That grass will spread. That grass will provide some stability. But again, we're going to use that straw on the outer edge here and on the steep areas in order to protect our soil, and then additional manures and stuff up top, and then when we can get some more bales of straw, we'll straw out the top. Now, if I was in a situation where I had an abundance of straw, I would not layer the outer bund so thick with straw that it killed out the grasses. I want my straw on the bund to facilitate cover crop growth. But if I had an abundance of wood chips, straw, bedding, other materials, I could impound those on the terrace in order to build up my vegetation in the sequential application of a cover crop. So if I had a couple round bales, for example, I could put 2 or 3 inch, even 4 or 5 inch thick mats on the level part of the contour of the earthwork terrace, but I would want to avoid doing that on the outer edges because I need the root mass on the outer edges and on the bund in order to secure that hill and to make it very, very stable. Now again, we're not building these 8 foot tall, so we don't have to have construction or rocks or block or anything like that, or even drainage tubes. But we do need to make sure that it's porous enough with root mass in order to handle this excess water, and the soil is not bare to prevent water from splashing and running off the surface. So I hope that's been helpful, folks, because a lot of people, they try to make it perfect, but I'll tell you, with my ability to schedule and the way the seasons have been coming along pretty quick here, you have to understand what you can do to adapt to the situation or the environment and ultimately still deliver the outcome that you're looking for. Come spring, we can come back here and earthworks this a little bit cleaner. Come spring, we can dig out the base there, or till, or whatever we need to do. We can get a new cover crop in, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paddocks to work with here. So if this is the only paddock that's idle, we still got 6 other paddocks working away, and this one can accumulate nutrients and start breaking down the soil structure and building up the soil food web to turn this Virginia clay into prosperous, sustainable, fully functioning, growing areas. I want to thank you for watching. This is a part of the Prosperity Homestead podcast. You can make sure you subscribe here, or you can visit www.prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page and ask your questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. But again, if you only had 1 bale of straw, what do you do with it? And on a broadacre market garden, or in this case, this terraced broadacre market garden, you're going to apply the straw where you have the most risk of erosion, such as, and where it's going to provide you the best opportunity for stabilization. I'm Justin Hitt. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here, and thank you for your support. Every time you buy a report or a resource, or you join a newsletter, you are financially supporting this, and pretty much 100% of all proceeds are going directly into seed, equipment, tools, everything you're seeing here. So we're converting your dollars into educational materials to help you grow more, to help you have greater food security, and ultimately get maximum value from your land without ecologically damaging it. I welcome your comments below. Thanks for watching.